Hello, my name is Adam. Welcome to English Daily Progress. Today, I want to tell you about a night that changed history. September 2nd, 1666, London, England. One of the greatest cities in the world, home to 500,000 people. A city of power, trade, and culture. But on this night, everything changed. Because of one small fire and one terrible decision. This is the true story of the Great Fire of London, told through the eyes of a man who lived it, a man who saw it all, a man who wrote it all down. His name was Samuel Pepys, and his story is one of the most important historical records we have. But more than that, it is a story about human nature, about how we ignore small problems until they become disasters, about how we react when everything falls apart, and about how we find the strength to rebuild. Let's begin.
Samuel Pepys was 33 years old in 1666. He worked for the English Navy, an important position. He was educated, successful, ambitious. He lived in a nice house in London with his wife Elizabeth. Life was good, but Samuel had an unusual habit. Every single night, he wrote in his diary. He wrote about his day, about his work, about his meals, about the weather, about everything. Big things and small things, important events and boring details. He wrote it all down. This habit seemed pointless to many people. Why waste time writing about ordinary days? But this habit would become one of the most valuable things in history. Because Samuel Pepys was about to witness something extraordinary, and he was going to write down every single detail. His diary would become the most complete record of the Great Fire of London, a record that historians still study today, 360 years later. But on the night of September 1st, 1666, Samuel had no idea what was coming. He went to bed like any other night, tired from work, ready to sleep, ready for another ordinary day tomorrow. But tomorrow would not be ordinary.
It was past midnight, September 2nd, 1666. Sunday morning, most of London was asleep. The city was quiet, dark, peaceful. On Pudding Lane, a narrow street near the River Thames, there was a bakery. The baker's name was Thomas Fariner. He made bread for the King's Navy. He worked hard every day. That night, like every night, Thomas made sure his ovens were safe before going to bed. He checked the fires. Everything seemed fine. He went upstairs to sleep. But something was wrong. In one of the ovens, a spark remained. A tiny spark, so small you could barely see it. But that spark was alive, and it was hungry. At around 1 a.m., the spark found something to eat, some wood near the oven. It grew, a small flame, then a bigger flame, then fire. The wooden floor caught fire, then the wooden walls, then the wooden ceiling. Within minutes, the entire bakery was burning. Thomas Fariner woke up to smoke, thick, black smoke filling his bedroom. He could not breathe. He could not see. Fire everywhere. He screamed for his family, his wife, his daughter, his servants. They ran to the window. The stairs were already on fire. They could not go down. They had to escape through the window, climbing across the roof, jumping to the neighbor's house. They all made it, all except one, a servant girl, too scared to jump. She stayed behind. She became the first victim of the Great Fire of London.
At 3 a.m., someone knocked on Samuel Pepys' door. One of his servants. "Sir, there is a fire." Samuel got out of bed. He walked to the window. He looked out over the city. In the distance, he could see orange light. A fire, yes, but it was far away. On Pudding Lane, at least 300 houses away from his home. London had fires all the time. The city was made of wood. Fires started often, but they usually burned a few houses and then stopped. This was normal, nothing to worry about. Samuel wrote in his diary later, "I thought little of it." Then he went back to bed. This was the mistake. Not just Samuel's mistake, everyone's mistake. The whole city saw the fire, and everyone thought the same thing. It is just a small fire. It is far away. It will stop soon. So they went back to sleep. The Lord Mayor of London, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, was called to the scene. He looked at the burning bakery. He looked at the fire spreading to nearby houses. Someone asked him if they should start pulling down houses to create a fire break. This was the standard way to stop fires. Destroy the houses in the fire's path so it has nothing to burn. But Sir Thomas said no. He said the famous words that would haunt him forever. "Piss on it. A woman could piss it out." He thought the fire was too small to worry about. He went home, back to bed. And while London slept, the fire grew, and grew, and grew. Samuel Pepys woke up at 7 a.m., a normal Sunday morning. He got dressed, had breakfast, prepared to go to church. But his servant came running. "Sir, the fire! It has not stopped. It is spreading." Samuel went to his window again. This time, what he saw made his blood run cold. The fire was much bigger now, much bigger. Not just a few houses, entire streets were burning. Flames reaching into the sky, black smoke covering the sun. He could hear screaming, even from far away. He could hear the roar of the fire, like a living beast. Samuel did not go to church. He went outside. He walked toward the fire. What he saw was hell on earth. People running everywhere, carrying whatever they could. Furniture, clothes, food, children. Some people were throwing their belongings into the river. Better to lose them in water than in fire. The streets were chaos. Carts crashing into each other. People shouting, crying, praying. And the fire kept coming, closer and closer. Samuel realized something terrible. This was not a normal fire. This was something else, something unstoppable. To understand what happened next, you need to know about London in 1666. The city was a perfect recipe for disaster. First, the buildings. Almost everything was made of wood. Wooden houses, wooden shops, wooden churches. Even the London Bridge was wooden. The houses were built very close together. So close, you could reach out your window and touch your neighbor's wall. The streets were narrow. Some streets were so narrow that two carts could not pass each other. Second, the weather. That summer had been the driest summer in years. No rain for months. Everything was bone dry. The wooden buildings were like kindling, ready to burn. Third, the wind. On that Sunday morning, a strong east wind was blowing, pushing the fire west, toward the center of London, toward the richest parts of the city. The fire moved faster than people could run. It jumped from house to house, from street to street, creating its own wind, sucking in air to feed itself, growing hotter and hotter. And finally, human error. The delay. Those crucial hours when everyone thought it was just a small fire, when they could have acted, when they could have created fire breaks, when they could have saved the city. But they waited too long, and now it was too late.
By noon on Sunday, Samuel knew his house was in danger. The fire was moving toward his neighborhood. He had to make a decision. What to save? What to leave behind? He looked around his home. Years of his life here. Furniture, paintings, books, his work documents, his money, his wine collection, and most importantly, his diary. 10 years of daily writing. His entire adult life recorded in those pages. He could not carry everything. No one could. He had to choose. He called his servants. "Quick, help me. We need to pack." They worked frantically. Samuel decided to bury his most valuable possessions. In his garden, he dug a hole. He placed his money there, his important documents, his wine, which he loved, and his diary. He covered them with dirt, hoping the fire would pass over, hoping the earth would protect them. Then he loaded a cart with other belongings, clothes, food, basic necessities. He sent his wife Elizabeth away to safety out of the city. But Samuel stayed. He had to see what would happen. He had to help if he could. And he had to keep writing, recording everything for history.
By Monday, the fire was out of control. It had burned all night, growing stronger, not weaker. Now it was a firestorm. Temperatures so hot they melted lead. The lead from church roofs ran down the streets like rivers. Stone buildings exploded from the heat. The fire created its own weather. Winds so strong they knocked people down. Smoke so thick you could not see your hand in front of your face. Samuel walked through the streets, witnessing everything. He saw St. Paul's Cathedral burning. The great cathedral, hundreds of years old, made of stone. Stone does not burn, people thought, but the wooden roof burned, and the heat was so intense that the stone cracked and exploded. The sound was like thunder. Pieces of burning wood flew through the air like missiles, landing on other buildings, starting new fires. The fire was everywhere now. Samuel wrote in his diary, "We could see the fire as one entire arch of fire from this side of the bridge to the other. It was like the end of the world." People were trapped. The fire had surrounded entire neighborhoods. Some people jumped into the Thames River to escape, swimming with whatever they could carry. Others huddled in churches, praying, but even churches burned. Animals ran wild through the streets. Cats, dogs, horses, all terrified, all trying to escape. And the homeless. Thousands of people who had lost everything, sleeping in the fields outside the city, watching their entire world burn. Samuel helped where he could. He carried water, he helped people move their belongings, he delivered messages, but mostly he watched and wrote.
By Tuesday, 1/3 of London had burned, 13,000 houses destroyed, 87 churches gone,
and the fire was still spreading. Finally, King Charles II took action. He came to the city himself. He ordered the creation of fire breaks, pull down the houses, create empty spaces, give the fire nothing to eat. Soldiers went to work, using hooks and ropes, pulling down houses in the fire's path. But it was hard work, dangerous work, and slow. The king himself helped, standing in the streets with his brother, passing buckets of water, encouraging the firefighters. This was unprecedented. A king working alongside common people? But desperate times required desperate measures. Samuel saw the king that day, covered in ash, exhausted, but determined. The king called Samuel over. "Samuel, you know the Navy. We need fire engines. We need pumps. We need every ship to bring water from the river. Organize it." Samuel went to work, coordinating boats, setting up water lines, organizing teams, working through the day and night. No sleep, no rest, just fighting. Fighting an enemy that could not be defeated, only contained.
Wednesday morning, September 5th, day 4 of the fire. Something changed. The wind stopped. After 3 days of strong east wind, suddenly, calm. This was the turning point. Without wind, the fire stopped spreading so fast. The fire breaks started to work. The empty spaces created by demolished houses stopped the flames. Slowly, section by section, the fire was contained. By Wednesday evening, the worst was over. Small fires still burned. They would burn for days, but the great firestorm was defeated. Samuel walked through the ruins that night. What he saw broke his heart. The city he loved was gone, completely gone. Where buildings once stood, only ash remained. Where streets once were, only rubble. The ground was still hot, too hot to walk on in some places. The smell of smoke hung over everything. Samuel came to where his house had been. By some miracle, it still stood. The fire had stopped just 2 streets away. His home was saved. He went to his garden, dug up his buried treasures. Everything was there. His money, his wine, his diary. He opened the diary, looked at the pages. His record of the last 4 days, the most important thing he had ever written. And he wrote one more entry, about the destroyed city, about the miracle that his home survived, about the people who lost everything. He wrote until his hand hurt, until he could not keep his eyes open. Then finally, Samuel Pepys slept.
When the counting was done, the numbers were staggering. 87 churches destroyed, 13,200 houses burned. Many people believed 100,000 people were left homeless. That was 1/5 of London's population. The financial damage was unimaginable. Millions of pounds lost, businesses destroyed, livelihoods gone. But surprisingly, the death toll was low. Officially, only 6 people died, though historians believe the real number was much higher. Poor people, homeless people, people with no records. They died and no one counted them. But compared to the size of the disaster, it was a miracle. Unlike the plague that hit London the year before, which killed 100,000 people. Why so few deaths in the fire? Because it moved slowly enough that most people could escape. And because Londoners helped each other. Rich and poor, noble and common, everyone worked together to save lives.
Samuel Pepys spent the following weeks helping to organize relief, finding shelter for the homeless, distributing food, beginning to plan the rebuilding. King Charles II made a promise. London will be rebuilt, better than before, stronger than before, more beautiful than before. And he kept that promise. The rebuilding of London took years, but it did not take centuries. Within a decade, London was reborn, this time with new rules. Buildings made of brick and stone, not wood. Streets wider, not narrow. Better planning, not chaos. Fire insurance was invented because of this disaster. Building codes were created. Fire brigades were organized. London learned from its mistakes. One of the most beautiful results was St. Paul's Cathedral. The old cathedral was completely destroyed, but a new one was built, designed by Christopher Wren, the magnificent St. Paul's that still stands today. Many consider it more beautiful than the original. Samuel Pepys continued his work with the Navy. He became even more important, more successful. But he never stopped writing his diary, until 1669, when his eyesight began to fail. His final diary entry was in May 1669. He lived until 1703, dying at age 70. But his diary ended before that. The diary was not published during his lifetime. It sat in a library forgotten for over 100 years. Finally, in the 1820s, someone found it. Someone decoded it because it was written in shorthand, and the world discovered the most detailed personal account of 17th century London, including the most complete record of the Great Fire. Today, Samuel Pepys' diary is one of the most important historical documents in English history, and the Great Fire is remembered as the disaster that destroyed London, but also as the event that led to modern London.
So why am I telling you this story? What does a fire from 1666 have to do with your life today? Everything. Because the Great Fire of London teaches us lessons that are still true today. Lesson 1. Small problems ignored become big disasters. The fire started in one oven, one tiny spark. If Thomas Foreigner had checked more carefully, if someone had acted in the first hour, if the Lord Mayor had taken it seriously, the disaster could have been prevented. But everyone said, it is just a small problem. We can deal with it later. How many times do you do this? A small health issue you ignore. A small problem in your relationship you avoid. A small financial issue you postpone. Small problems do not stay small. They grow. And one day you wake up and everything is burning. Lesson 2. Preparation matters. London was not prepared. Wooden buildings built too close. No fire breaks. No proper firefighting equipment. No organized response plan. When disaster struck, chaos followed. Are you prepared for emergencies? For changes? For problems? Or are you like London, assuming everything will be fine? Lesson 3. What you save matters. Samuel Pepys had to choose what to save. He could not save everything. He chose his money, his work, and his diary, his record, his legacy. In your life, what are you protecting? What are you saving? What matters most to you? And are you actually taking care of it, or are you too busy with things that do not matter?
Lesson 4. Communities survive disasters together. London survived because people helped each other. Rich people opened their homes to poor people. The king worked alongside commoners. Strangers helped strangers. In your life, do you have a community? People who would help you in a disaster? People you would help? Or are you isolated, alone, unprepared? Lesson 5. Disasters create opportunities. Yes, the fire destroyed London, but it also created the opportunity to build a better London. Safer, more beautiful, more organized. Sometimes things need to burn down. Sometimes you need to lose everything. To rebuild better, to start fresh, to become stronger. Have you experienced a disaster in your life? A failure? A loss? A breakdown? That was your fire. The question is, what will you build from the ashes?
The Great Fire of London burned for 4 days. It destroyed most of the city. It left thousands homeless. It seemed like the end, but it was not the end. It was a new beginning. Samuel Pepys understood this. He wrote about the destruction, but he also wrote about the hope, about the people who refused to give up, about the city that rose from the ashes. His diary survived. His story survived. And because of him, we know exactly what happened on those 4 terrible days in September 1666. We know the mistakes that were made. We know the courage that was shown. We know the lessons that were learned. And those lessons are still relevant today. Do not ignore small problems. Be prepared. Protect what matters. Build community. Turn disasters into opportunities. These are not just lessons from history. These are lessons for life. My name is Adam, and this has been the story of the Great Fire of London. Thank you for listening. And remember, when Samuel Pepys saw the small fire at 3 a.m., he went back to sleep. Do not make the same mistake. When you see a problem, even a small one, deal with it before everything burns. Subscribe to English Daily Progress for more stories from history that teach us about life. Leave a comment and tell me, what is your small fire? What problem are you ignoring? Deal with it today before it is too late. See you in the next video. This is Adam.